One of the women who could not be there today is, of course, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, one of Epstein's accusers who was pivotal to the federal criminal charges that were finally brought against him in 2019. Virginia Giuffre tragically died by suicide earlier this year. But today she was represented at the press conference by her brother and sister-in-law who spoke on her behalf, and many of the survivors took a moment to honor her memory. At the end of today's event, the lawyers representing Epstein survivors made sure everyone there understood how important Virginia's legacy continues to be today.
Virginia Roberts Giuffre is an American hero. Yeah. She is somebody without whom we would not be able to have this voice. She was the one who had courage to name names, speak out against people, and she was standing up against everybody at one time with an enormous amount of pressure.
And most of these women are here because of Virginia Roberts Giuffre.
Earlier today, I spoke with Virginia Roberts Giuffre's brother and sister-in-law about today's event, the calls to release the Epstein files, and what happens next. I'm joined now by Virginia Giuffre's brother, Sky Roberts, and his wife, Amanda Roberts. I want to thank both of you so much for being here, for just being tireless advocates for not only the memory of your sister, but also so many other survivors. I know you have both been a tremendous source of strength. Let me just start. I've been glued watching every detail of the last 36 hours, and there have been some incredible moments over the course of the last 2 days. I mean, Brad Edwards called your sister an American hero. Survivors said today and yesterday that they were there because of your sister. I'm going to get emotional talking about this. I'm sorry. But how does that feel? I have siblings. I have not been through anything like you've been through. How has that felt to hear your sister called out as such a source of inspiration over the last 2 days?
We are so proud of what she was able to accomplish over her lifetime. You know, I think many people can relate to that. You know, she's a normal person. You know, she's somebody that you could go down the street and have a drink with. But the truth is that she fought for so many brave survivors that came forward today. And something that really struck me today was, you know, in talking to some of the survivors was, you know, she was like 15 of them, you know, in one. She would just come out and point fingers and was not scared to go up against these rich and powerful men. And so, you know, and I would say today is a show of force. You know, I am so proud of these women for coming forward, for these survivors coming forward. And she should be here today. She would be here today if she could. But we are very honored and very proud of her.
Yeah, I will say I felt her in everything that they said. But even in just seeing them and sitting with them, I see so much of her in them. And so I know that she's proud of them. This was a moment that Virginia had been waiting for a very long time. And I felt her. I felt her presence there.
Today, this morning, we've talked about this a little bit, but you were part of this incredibly powerful press conference on the steps of Capitol Hill. And I just wanted to, Sky, paraphrase something you said this morning, because it really stuck with me. You said if you vote no, your stance will be clear. And I think you were talking, of course, about the discharge petition. You went on to say, look these survivors in the eye and tell them why. Then look the people of the United States in the eye and tell them why. And then when you're alone, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself why. And that is fundamentally what the choice that every elected official has. What do you think they are looking, the members who have not come out and said they would support this discharge petition, what are they looking themselves in the mirror and telling themselves as to why they're not supporting it, do you think?
They have to live with that, right? I think for me, it's not about what you're saying right now. It's about what you're doing and what kind of actions are we actually bringing forth, right? We say these really fancy words, transparency and accountability, but that's not just a word, that's an action, right? So you can't just say it and then not do anything about it. And I think we also need to stop redirecting the attention, right? We need to be very straightforward. And we need to stop beating around the bush. And that's from the top all the way down to the bottom, right? And I think part of that right now is this is a moment. There really is a true opportunity for them to do the right thing. And if they decide not to, then we know what side you stand on. Your voters, the people who put you in office to serve the people, will now know exactly where you stand. And then that's my question to them, because it's so relatable, because we are fathers, we are mothers, we are brothers, we're sisters. And so at the very fundamental level, this is a human issue. And I hope to dear God that that is the strong message that continued to be brought forward, because this is not a party issue. This is a human issue. And so they need to boil it down to the bottom here and stop protecting these monsters.
Redirect is a very good way of saying it. I mean, you both and so many other survivors and family members have been very clear that you want all of these files to be public, that you want them to be available, that you want the families to be able to review them. And yet there are a range of excuses. And again, should not be a partisan thing, but to quote someone specifically, one of the explanations Speaker Mike Johnson gave was that the petition does not, quote, adequately protect innocent victims, as if it is the people who have been the victims who are the reason for keeping these files back. What do you say to that?
They've been waiting for decades. They came forward a long time ago. And they are for this. This is what they have been asking for. And it should be with their protection. It should be those who want to remain anonymous. They should remain anonymous. And that is something that, from my understanding, has been worked through with this new bill that they are trying to pass. They have carefully sat with survivors and the lawyers of the survivors to make sure that that protection is in place. But they are asking, we are asking, Virginia was asking for a long time. Her documents are waiting right now to be unsealed. They've always been asking for this.
One of the, there were so many powerful moments today. Another powerful moment on the steps was Lisa Phillips announcing a list would be compiled, a list of people who need to be held accountable. And I just want to say, obviously, that should not be on the shoulders of survivors to do, but it seems it is currently part of what survivors and their family members are trying to do. Why is that so important?
I would say, this isn't just a moment, this is a movement right now. And what you're essentially doing is you're putting these survivors in a position where they have to stick their necks out there and potentially get threats. They have at risk of being sued. And I think it's a real disgrace to them, because it's the government's job to protect the people. It's the Department of Justice's job to protect the people, not the powerful. So by them basically, again, I'll say it, they're putting these files out here at different periods, but what we're starting to feel like is they're not really uncovering much. They're just trying to give this perception of transparency and then shove the rest underneath the rug. And what the survivors are saying clearly is, are you really going to make us do this?
Yeah.
And I think this is a powerful moment in our history, and it's time to stand by doing the right thing. Don't put them in this position. Don't make them do that.
And you're talking about, just to make sure people understand, there was a release just yesterday of 33,000 documents, most of which had been public before. It wasn't a lot of the information that survivors and their families are looking for. That seems to be one of the things that some, including Mike Johnson, are leaning into as this process is happening. We don't need this discharge petition. But that's not enough, is what you're saying, I think.
We're not releasing all of them, right? We didn't ask to release some of them. We were asked to release all of them. And at least from early reports, I haven't personally had the opportunity to skim, go through every single one of them, but it doesn't look like there's a ton of new information inside of there. We're looking for real justice here. And again, it's not a word, it's an action.
Yeah.
It's only 1% of the files that I think you want access to, and that has been by people who have reviewed it, and 97% of what they released has been released before. Right. So people have reviewed it for you, I will say. Let me ask you about, because you just touched on this, and I thought this was an incredibly powerful moment of the press conference this morning. There were a number of people, Haley Robeson, Anuska, talking about the threats and the impact of threats on their lives. Really scary moments. People who are already taking the moment to courageously speak out and feeling threats from a range of people. Where are they coming from? What should people understand about that and the threats that so many survivors are living with day to day?
Yeah. Virginia lived with that every single day. And when she first came forward, I think it gets lost on people how large this was. This was a global operation, how powerful these people were, how much money they have. She spoke about basically being threatened into financial ruin. She was physically threatened. Her family was threatened all throughout this. And then there is the level of public scrutiny, right? You know, the culture when they first came out, there's this disbelief. There's always a constant question of survivors, and they're always constantly criticized about how and why they say things. And these were children. They were young girls. And we have forgotten that. And I think we really need to open our eyes and change the culture and the conversation. We have to allow these survivors the safety and protection of their truth.
That is a very powerful way of saying it. One of the things, I mean, neither of you have asked to be put in the spotlight. I think you'd probably rather be living your life privately in many ways, but you're here for your sister. There's an easy way that this could all be released. The President and the Department of Justice could release all these files. It doesn't even have to go through this process of a discharge petition. That's not necessary. I don't know if you've seen this. I just want to play because President Trump was asked about, the question he was asked was about the accusations that the Department of Justice is slow walking the release of the files. He was just asked this shortly after the press conference. Let's just play it.
This is a Democrat hoax that never ends. From what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given, but it's really a Democrat hoax because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president.
I mean, this is something that everybody should support. How do you even make progress when that is what is standing in the way of having this all released?
That's a very frustrating feeling, right? This is the leader of our nation. This was no small thing. It wasn't irrelevant. It's not a hoax. There's testimony after testimony. Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted. We know that this is really American. People know that this happened. And so it puts survivors, again, these people who have had a very real lived experience, live with their trauma, that journey doesn't end. And to hear the leader of their nation say things like that for us, it's gut-wrenching.
I want to ask you about, I mean, your sister, she wrote a memoir titled Nobody's Girl, a memoir of surviving abuse and fighting for justice. But your family put out a statement, and I think this is important for people to hear and understand, saying you don't want the book to be released. Help people watch and understand why.
Well, I think there's a two-part to that. We were never not for the book being published. I think there is another story about Virginia that she had a very difficult time coming forward with, and she was finally able to towards the end of her life, that a lot of people were unaware of. And it really is the domestic violence portion of her story. And we as her family who witnessed it and seen it, and ultimately that's what put her in the position to make the choice that she did. We were very adamant that this book addressed that issue because it's so very important. It's so heavily intertwined. Statistically, it's very easy for you from one abuse to enter another relationship like that. But we were able to come to an agreement with the publishing house to really address those things because we stand by the work and her story needs to be told. But we really wanted to provide context for the reader, for them to understand that other aspect of the story.
I think that's so important for people to hear, which is why I wanted to ask, because it's her story. She's not able to tell her story anymore, which is why you two are telling her story. What else, Sky, about your sister do you wish people knew and understood in this moment? Because so many people have heard her name over the last couple of days.
Yeah. I think you framed it the best in at the beginning of this interview is she really was an American hero. You know, but she was still a mom, she was still a sister, she was still such a normal person, but she was fierce and she would stand up to anyone. And, you know, I spoke to a survivor earlier today and she knew Virginia, and they said, if they just only listened to us 20 years ago. This is the moment she always wanted. She would be screaming right now from a mountain because that's who she is. But it's not because any other reason. There was no motive for her to come forward. The reason she came forward is very simple, and this is why you break it down to the human level, is because when she held her baby girl for the first time, she knew this couldn't happen to any other children out there. Because if she hadn't come forward, Epstein would still be doing these absolutely monstrous things. Ghislaine Maxwell would still be doing these monstrous things. And the very disappointing part is our government isn't putting these other people in their place. And that is their responsibility to do. And that's why the show of force today on the footsteps in our nation's capital is a powerful statement for her, for people, and she inspired many of these survivors to come forward, and she's still with us.
Before I let you go, I just want to ask you, for anybody who's tuning in and is so moved by this story and wants to do something, what happens now, and what should people out there be doing?
Talk to your legislators, right? That's how we make change. We continue to demand answers, and not just answers, but action. We want to see further investigations. And if that's something that you want to see, which I believe the American people want to see that, let them know. Don't stay silent. Keep talking. Don't let this go back under the rug.
Sky and Amanda Roberts, you're amazing people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
I think you can see why the two of them stuck with me through the course of the day after I spoke with them. Today, this morning, was so much about empowering and lifting up these incredible survivors. And I wanted to mention that before her death, Virginia Giuffre founded an organization called Speak Out, Act, Reclaim, or SOAR to help survivors of sex trafficking reclaim their stories. Virginia chose the blue morpho butterfly as the organization's logo to symbolize the transformation from victim to survivor. And that was so much what this morning was about. So tonight I'm wearing my own blue butterfly in support of the survivors of sex trafficking everywhere who have been so bravely speaking out.